I just have the simple question because kind of Kathleen started off, but she was, or when we were talking earlier out there, you guys had some interesting stuff. Basically, what history do you and your family have with farming? Because I know it's not a short one.
Okay, well, I guess I should start out because I'm 45 years older than Maggie, so I probably have a little bit more history, but she's going to come in there pretty quickly. I was raised on a dairy farm, the youngest of 4 kids, and it's interesting because I was of the old style where you raised kids to have labor force, and that's not really much of the case anymore, I don't believe. But we obviously was not big enough to go right into the milking parlor or arena to milk cows. So when I was turned 5, my parents put in a layer house to raise chickens, and I could case eggs. So I actually entered into the farming workforce at 5 years old, and was again, there was 9 years between me and my oldest brother, so he was almost out of the house by the time I got old enough to be able to work. And so I was put on a tractor like when I was 12, and you know, was right there helping the rest of the family to farm and to take care of. Back then was a pretty decent dairy herd, about 60 head of cows, and about 3,000 laying chickens. And so we were, you know, the average type farmer, I guess back then, wouldn't even hold a candle to what a lot of farmers do anymore, but at least in the Midwest. Maine's a little smaller, but I've had off and on about 65 years of experience in farming. I've done some other things besides farming, and I've also have done other things while farming. So I've done quite a bit of different types of farming. I started out in of course, milking and that stuff, and then my parents sold the dairy herd when I was 18. And we switched the farm over from a dairy farm to actually corn and soybeans, which was really coming on strong in the mid 60s and 70s. So I've done that type of farming. I said in 1995 I would never farm again, and I found more times in my life I've had to eat the words that I said. Because I am back farming, but it's a different kind of farming, and this is where Maggie really comes into this, because she came along and we were doing a CSA at that point when she was born, maybe a couple years after she was born. But anyway, she was right out there helping us the time she could walk, and so we just was training her how to farm as we were doing yet a different kind of farming, which was fruits and vegetables and CSA and that type of stuff.
What does that stand for?
Community supported agriculture, and that has also morphed over time, but. Back then you had gatherings, and people came out to help you farm and those types of things. And what we found was that Maggie at 4 years old knew more about gardening than a lot of the people that we had the CSAs with. And for example, she was out there at 4 years old, and we had a couple women weeding different types of vegetables. And she'd have to tell them which was the vegetable and which was the weed. And I thought that was quite funny, but that was a lot of fun. We moved to Maine primarily so Maggie could do the type of farming she wanted to. We still have a farm in Indiana, and it's leased out to a neighbor because 200 acres of farm ground there is not enough to even think about farming. The neighbor is a small farmer there. He crops about 2,000 acres, and that's a part-time job. He has a full-time job off the farm, so that's quite different. So we thought that Maggie'd have a better future here in the type of agriculture she wanted to do than what we did on a farm in southern Indiana. So in 2018, we bought a small farm here and moved our part of that farm here, and been farming here since 2018. And so you might want to talk a little about that then.
Yeah, and saying small farm, we moved from the farm down there. It was the family farm, so altogether it was somewhere around 200 acres, but we actively were on probably around 50 of it, and we actually own 10 acres up here. We rent about another 12 for additional pasture land, and then we have agreements for hay ground and so forth. But it's not a small farm here necessarily, where there's a lot more just parceling up of land, and there's a lot more trees as well, whereas, you know, down there fields are just a lot bigger in general. But I mean, maybe it's just us thinking that it's a small farm, but you know, coming up here, and you know, we've kind of always wanted to do the more homesteady type thing, where you have a wide variety of animals, you have your garden, and you kind of do a little bit of everything instead of focusing on just one piece of it, because everything ties into each other. And so we have our animals, and their manure gets composted to go to the garden, but then the garden, the scraps then get fed to the animals, and it's a cycle that works really well together, that gets interrupted if you only have one piece of it on your property. And so while we don't actively sell all of it, we focus on just small pieces of it that are large enough to actually sell. We still do all of it just because of that cyclical nature of everything. And we moved up here primarily for the dairy, because Indiana and the Midwest in general is not a great dairy area unless you want to be humongous and do like grade A type dairy. And we were never particularly interested in that. You, growing up on a dairy farm, knew
all about that.
That was not the size that you wanted to do again. We wanted to stay like under 10 head of cows, and doing the licensing there, they really weren't interested, and you can't sell raw milk there. And so trying to do that, it was a lot of just loopholes and stuff. And so we have family up here, and so we moved up here, and it's a lot easier. The state is still a state, but we find it a lot nicer to be able to just kind of do what we want to do in the sense of the farm, and have the state cooperate with us instead of trying to fight against us to do this big like mono ag thing that is so prevalent in a lot of other states, like down in the Midwest and like down there. And that's really why we came up here, but it's kind of continued to morph, as I think a lot of things do. We do still do the dairy, but during COVID, as a lot of things changed, we kind of started experimenting with sourdough. And originally it was a way to sell more cheese, just kind of a marketing tactic. And we started with the bread because one of our philosophies is that we're not ever going to sell something that we ourselves don't like. And so we are testing things and trying things, and we've often been eating something for months before we're ever going to be selling it. But we started selling this bread just kind of as a trial thing, like, hey, we've been making some bread, I don't know whether any of you guys would be interested, because we were already in these markets with our meat and our cheese. And it was kind of popular. We were selling some, and then you had the idea for these bagels, just kind of continuing to explore, sell more cheese, and they started exploding. And so that's really a lot of what we do now is the bagels. And we were having a conversation just now about breaking even about farming, because a lot of farmers don't necessarily, it's very hard to make money farming. It's not an easy economical business. And it really wasn't until we started selling a lot of bagels and bread that we started to actually break even on the farm. So.
But tying it all together, I don't think we'd have it any other way. We'll never stop doing the other things just because one thing becomes very successful. You know, that again goes back to the mono idea, and I don't believe in it. I think that's just, it's not a way to exist. And family, again, I was raised on a family farm, what truly was a family farm. And now very few of the farms are family farms because at least one of the parents is working off farm, which my wife Gail and her mother is yet working off the farm, but we're probably coming close to where she won't have to. And spending time with your children is a way of training them for future life. And even if they don't want to farm in the future, which I have 3 adult sons and none of them are farming, but they have some of the work ethic and some of that really comes from farming and working with the family brings some ties that will never exist any other way. So I think that's really a crucial piece of you know, how we live.